a franchise sales guy for 15 straight years. I want to say that again, 15 straight years.
Just makes me smile, man. It makes my heart warm.
There's nothing sexy about that. Yep. We were very, very focused on the development of our company. And what the mantra we had was sell one more cup of coffee tomorrow than we did today. That was it. And that we woke up to that mantra for 15, 17, 20 years. I'll point out if there's any sort of Kentucky draw going on.
If there's any hillbilly going on there.
Hillbilly.
Hey man,
what town are you in?
So we're right here in Fort Wright, man. From our we have a 9-story building. I bought it about 3 years ago. I started Pivot Realty Group. I'm about 10 years behind you. If you did start that barista stuff in '96, like it says.
I did.
So I started.
I don't look a day over 35, but
yeah, you're looking good, man. Whatever the age is, you're looking good. I started out as a realtor, man. It's probably similar to you starting as a barista, and just found some ways that I thought things should be done, and off we went. And so The grind, the craziness. I started the company because I don't want to get this podcast. I don't want to be about me, but I started the company. I was 28. I'm 43 now, and 3 months before the housing crash.
Ooh.
So when I'm on other people's podcast, that story about, man, all of us have to have these stories about pain and adversity, and just I love your book Grind, which we can talk about that. Cool. That idea. There's so many things I think that reverberate with entrepreneurs that have been at this game for 10 or 20 years. We could take the name off of our businesses, and I bet there's similar stories.
Oh, every time.
Yeah.
Every time.
And so that's what's exciting. This BIGGBY thing. So I stopped on the way here, not to give you too many BIGGBY plugs in the podcast, but once we get started. But I stopped and I text Dave and Jack, who are on my content team, and I said, guys, you want a drink? I'm stopping. I have to do it in honor of the podcast. And so we got a little espresso shot, so we're ready for this stuff.
All right, fire up.
So I guess Dave will get us cranking. So Mike McFall. Founder, semi-founder.
We go by my partner and I we own the company 50-50.
Yep.
We go by co-founder, co-CEO.
Co-founder, co-CEO of BIGGBY Coffee.
Yeah.
I'm pumped about the podcast, man. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure.
I'm pumped because you have this book. I want to touch on some things today about the book Grind. That speaks to my heart. I don't know how many other people it speaks to, but we're going to find out. And just some of the principles, what I saw when we were doing a lot of research on who's this Mike guy. Let's look into this growth of this coffee company and what's happening here out of Michigan. And I said, man, what's happening here? There's some really cool, unique things. And as we dug in this book Grind, I'm assuming everything about you since 1996 when you started as a barista at what was already BIGGBY Coffee, I believe.
Yes.
I bet the book Grind probably lays out your path over the past 23 years, 25 years, 26 years.
Yeah.
And so I'm pumped to hear the story because when you see a company that's growing like you guys, I believe around 250 locations, 9 states.
320. We opened 3 this week.
That's awesome, man. And you're taking the time to talk to us, so this better be special. So I'm excited to hear about what this journey's like, about what fast growth is in the beginning, on how you even build to get to a point where you can have this type of compounded growth, and share this with all of the people out here that think they want to be entrepreneurs, and then people that have started on the journey to learn some things from a guy that is having massive success now.
Cool. Love it.
Yeah. So I think tell us a little bit about, as you're sitting here today and you reflect back on the Mike of 1996 and this, whatever the idea of BIGGBY was, is give us a story. Can you a little bit of enlighten us on this journey a little bit?
So when we started, I just took the job as a barista, and what really happened for me, I was preparing to go back to graduate school. I was 25 years old, and I was really just getting ready to apply to graduate schools. And I was on a very specific research project at the university, and so I took the job at the coffee shop just to supplement a little bit of income because I was only working at the university 20 hours a week. So I got involved there, and it sounds so corny, but honestly, I really did fall in love with being a barista. And it was invigorating. I loved people coming in the morning. I loved, interacting with them, sending them out in a better mood when they came in. Just, really, I enjoyed it. Right.
So was that necessary? I'll interrupt at different times when I hear important things, and I'll bring you back. Is it necessary to fall in love?
I think it helps. I'll say that. I think it really helps to love the business you're in. And I don't think it's necessary. I have a dear friend of mine who ran a flower company. And FTD is the florist chain, and he was the CEO of that company. And he didn't love flowers. He loved what he did in relation to growing the business and being involved in the business. So no, I don't think it's necessary. I do think it helps.
So sorry, I interrupted you on the path. So to put a little extra change in your pocket going through grad school. So is this in Michigan?
Yeah. I was in East Lansing. I was working at Michigan State University. And, I think, Mark, really what I've always talked about is that one of the primary things I see in successful entrepreneurs is they can ferret out a good opportunity versus a bad opportunity. And they sense the good opportunities. And that's really what I did in that moment. I don't think it took a rocket scientist in 1996 to see what was going to happen in coffee. And then couple that with what my partner was up to. My partner was a very, very experienced restaurateur coming into the coffee space. And he had built a platform there for us that was running a coffee shop like a high volume restaurant. And it was very, very different than what was going on in the coffee space. And I can give you a bunch of detail on that. I'm not sure that's all that inspiring or important, but sensing what is an opportunity and then pursuing it. And then relatively early in that process as an entrepreneur, when you look at different opportunities, which we do all the time, when you realize it's not an opportunity, turning on that pretty quick. Right?
How do you know that?
Right. So, I think there's some innateness to that, but I also think it's about having a very real conversation, with yourself, with your partners about what's going on, and really almost making the company that you're working on or the idea you're working on continue to prove out to you that it is an opportunity.
So what about, so in the book, your book Grind, so I believe, was that written in 2020?
It came out in 18.
Okay,
fall of 18.
Okay, so I just love the name. And when we were doing research, we're like, man, let's find out about BIGGBY and the co-founder and Mike. And I pulled it up, and I go on Audible. I'm like, I'm going to listen to the thing, and I'm like, it's not on Audible. So then I went on Amazon. I'm like, I have to order it. But there's a few things I want to touch on in that book, but one of them is about this idea of personal due diligence, right? And how does that line up with you knowing, as an entrepreneur born, did you learn these traits to identify an opportunity? How can someone know if they have those traits? Are they entrepreneurial at heart? Should they take advantage of these opportunities? And let's face it, what happens if they're not a good decision maker, if they're not a good evaluator? So does the personal due diligence line up with that, or is that a separate idea?
No, to me, it's one of the primary premises of the book, which is that the book is not about whether you should be or shouldn't be an entrepreneur. What I really want to talk about, the conversation I really want to have, is you need to evaluate yourself. You need to do due diligence on yourself, which is I've never heard of that concept before. I believe that the entrepreneur, the person, the individual, is the most important ingredient to the success of your enterprise, to the success of your new business. And so what we need to do as entrepreneurs is we need to be continuously evaluating and doing, quote, due diligence on ourselves to determine what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are. And then what it becomes about is once you get real about that, leveraging your strengths and then supporting yourself in the areas that you have weakness. There isn't a single person on the planet that's got the full toolbox, right? And I got massive weaknesses, but you have to figure out how to support those. And so that's what that concept is about. I think there's some, primary personality traits that make an entrepreneur, maybe it's easier to be an entrepreneur if you have them.
Do you have those right off the tongue, or is that just a feeling, a thought in your mind? Do you have what those traits are?
I do. One of them is optimism. The successful entrepreneurs that I know, I believe that they understand in their souls that tomorrow is going to be better than today. And they work because of that. And if you don't have that, it's going to be an uphill climb, because you are going to get kicked in the teeth hundreds of times as you develop your business. And you got to wake up and know that today is going to be better than yesterday, and you just keep moving forward. That's one of them.
Yeah.
Another one to me is enthusiasm and just pure energy. It takes you are the power source of your business. You're the sun for your business. And if you aren't ready for that, that business is going to draw on you constantly. The people are going to draw on you constantly. And if you aren't ready for that, if you aren't ready to be that quote power source for your business, I think it's going to be a struggle. And so, those are two, there's plenty more, but I guess a third one that I would add is you got to be a promoter. You got to be a promoter. And if you're not a promoter, you're really going to have to work hard to supplement that. And so to me, that's the other one that I just believe that, you have to be ready to promote what you're doing at every corner, every opportunity. I did a thing, I don't know if you're aware of this, but I did a thing called the Grind Score. And it's a 24 question quiz that really is, as we've been talking about, it's just simply meant to start a conversation about what your strengths and your weaknesses are. One of the questions I ask in that, which I think is interesting, is when you're on a plane, are you interested in engaging and talking to the person next to you, or you put the headphones on and look down and hope the person doesn't notice you're there, right? And I think that articulates what I'm talking about here. Do I want to sit down and talk to somebody about my business and tell them all about BIGGBY and tell them all about everything I got going on? Yeah, absolutely. Right. And so that's what I'm talking about being a promoter. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about.
So these three things, do they wrap into, as you were talking about, I was like, man, attitude's everything.
Attitude's everything.
Yeah.
Absolutely everything. Yeah.
So were you naturally this guy when you were, I'll say, a kid in 96? Were you naturally this person?
Yeah,
you're the same guy sitting in front of us with the smile, the great energy, right? The optimism, the enthusiasm, these things you're talking about.
Yeah. And I think, my mom tells stories about me when I was a kid. Like, she'd have to drag me in from the driveway because I'd be out there shooting hockey pucks at the net, in order to get me to take a shower and go to bed. It'd be 9:30 at night. It'd be dark, and it's just whatever I've got myself involved in my whole life, I throw myself at it 100%.
You're all in.
Yeah, all in, 100%.
So if you find people who want to be future leaders in your company, I'm sure you're a part of, you're probably on boards, you're a part of different business groups. I'm sure you've had leadership training. You've probably been in front of universities and people invite you in. What do you share with the younger generations, and not just younger generations, people that are your age and a little older that think they want a little something more out of life? How do you transfer these ideas that were you and that how do you transfer those to people?
God, what a question. That's a good one.
Because I search for it every day,
Yeah. How do I transfer it?
Can you?
Yeah, I think, I think you can. I think you can transfer some primary messages. I do talk about attitude constantly. But the other thing, if you were to ask me, I'm going to ask myself the question in a different way. Maybe it's on point, maybe it's not. If I had to summarize in one word how we've been able to get the company to where it is today, that one word would be focus. And to me, I watch and see a lot of entrepreneurs out there, even successful ones, sort of by traditional metrics. They get in their own way all the time. And because, what I tell people is I was a franchise sales guy for 15 straight years. I want to say that again, 15 straight years.
Just makes me smile, man. It makes my heart warm.
There's nothing sexy about that. Yep. We were very, very focused on the development of our company. And what the mantra we had was sell one more cup of coffee tomorrow than we did today. That was it. And that we woke up to that mantra for for 15, 17, 20 years. And I think that the one thing that I
the focus, right?
Yeah, focus hard, but also time frame. I heard a great clip by Gary Vee the other day, and I loved it. And somebody asked him the question, okay, so if you're talking about how to start a company, how do you instill speed? Like how do you get things done and quickly and so on? I don't know if you saw this clip, but he goes, speed's the devil. Speed's the devil. Right. And he went off on this topic that it's not about quick. Mm-hmm. And I see so many people that expect instantaneous. I talk about having impatience with execution, but patience with results. So you got to be really, really impatient with executing and working, but then you have to be super patient with results.
So how do you convince people? How do we convince entrepreneurs that are coming, after you and next generation that speed is the devil? Like, why is that? So if you go into that and so, yeah, Gary Vee does a great job, I think, of speaking. There's a lot of people that want to be entrepreneurs, but also he speaks to people that have already done it, that are even his age, and you're like, yep, that's it. And so why is that? Why is speed the devil? What have you learned about that?
Well, the way I articulate speed's the devil is that if you aren't ready to commit 100% to this new enterprise for 3, 5, 7, 10 years, don't start. I tell my prospective franchisees that anytime I can. It's a long game. And anybody that I know, I mean, of course there's the unicorns out there, right? Yeah. But that's like winning the lottery. Yeah. Go play the lottery. Don't
if you're counting on that, that is the exception to the rule.
Right. Yeah. If you're looking for a 20, 30, 50, 70, $100 million exit in 3 years, like that's a unicorn. And again, I'd go play the lottery. So what we focused on was every single day for 15, 17, 20 years, selling one more cup of coffee tomorrow than we did today. And by the way, Mark, this past Saturday, we had our first $1 million day.
Congrats, man. How good's that feel?
I don't talk about money that much. No. I'm happy to. I don't really give a shit. But like to cross $1 million in a day that's
a marker, right? These are substantial moments that you can look back and you can kind of take your own inventory, right?
Yep. We had $1 million.
We earned this.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, I looked, I just saw the report. I actually saw the report this morning. And I looked down and I looked at it and I was like, we did $1 million, 1,013,000.
And what's going to be wild? When's the day going to happen? So this took you guys 25, 26 years to have that day?
Yeah.
How long will it be until you have a $2 million day? 3 to 5 years?
We're growing at 24.5% this year, and it's accelerating. So yeah, probably within 3 years.
Isn't that? And it happened overnight, right?
Yeah, right. 25 years, man. I'm telling you, it is like, and just so many just moments of like exhaustion and throughout those 25 years. But you if you aren't prepared for that, and again, speed kills, right? If you are in a hurry, if you aren't willing to sit, this is going to sound so odd to probably many entrepreneurs, but if you aren't willing to sit quietly and listen to what's going on in your world and understand what's going on in your world, and then make minor adjustments, I talk about innovation. Innovation doesn't happen in these big grand strokes. Innovation is very incremental, right? You make very small adjustments. You pay attention. How do they impact whatever it is you're working on? And then you analyze it again, and then you make small adjustments. And that takes a degree of patience that's extraordinary.
Do you think that you touched on this idea of that you focused, and this patience is, hey, let me just sell one more cup of coffee the next day than we sold today? Do you think, in a macro idea, do you think you can break almost every business down to something that simple?
Absolutely. You have to, in my opinion. You have to break it down. I just got into it with a guy at Google the other day, and he's a senior level guy and very smart. Right? These guys are brilliant, right? But I made a case he was a guest in my class, and I made a case that as an entrepreneur and startup, you should put together your media campaign for 12 months, right? Work on it, spend a day, spend an afternoon, put it together, decide what you want to do, allocate the budget appropriately, turn the key on, let it run, and let it run for a year. And then come back a year later, evaluate, look at it, make adjustments, see what worked, see what didn't work, redraw the plan, align it with your budget, and then turn the key back on, and then let it run for a year. Now, the point I'm trying to make there is this exact concept that Gary Vee and we're talking about here, which is speed. I mean, I'm not like that. That is not a hurried process. And his point, he kind of blew me up. His point was, yeah, but you can go on Google, and I mean, every 15 minutes you can be analyzing your results, and you can be tweaking, you can be changing, you can be. I'm like, yeah, but that's if Google is your answer. Sorry, the Google search, whatever it is, Google AdWords is not the answer to every single business out there. In fact, I would say there's a limited number of businesses. I said I would turn Google on, and I would turn it on. Maybe a year is too long. Okay, I'll take that, right? But I wouldn't be looking at it every 30 days, maybe once a quarter. And so that's that whole concept of just slowing down and really understanding and listening to what's going on out there, especially from your customer.
That's what I was going to ask.
And then,
so you jumped it there because you're so brilliant. And I'm thinking, okay, if Google isn't the metric, in my mind, I'm like, well, of course it's going to be the customer, right?
Right.
So where do you go? Where does an entrepreneur, so BIGGBY in your first 10 stores, 15 stores, 20 stores, when an entrepreneur is starting out, how do you listen to the customer?
What are they buying is the simplest metric, right? So I think the most brilliant story that I've ever heard on this topic is Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook. And you may have heard this story, but it was meant to be a directory. It was meant to be a phone book, right, for universities. And there was a moment when he looked and he said, boy, people are changing out their profile photos a lot. And he started to pay attention to that. And then he realized this was more than a directory. This was a way for people to share what was going on for them. And so then he focused in on making it simpler and easier and more robust to change out profile photos and then also to load other content. Obviously, in the end, it became Facebook. But had he missed that nuance, had he missed that in the beginning, he wouldn't have built Facebook, right? Facebook would not have become what it is. And all he was doing was paying attention to what the customer was doing with his product. And, we talk to our students all the time about, you think your business, your product is in your brain, because we deal with a lot of engineering students and so on that are coming up with ideas. You think that your product is well baked today, that you want to launch, and it's it's going to revolutionize the world, right? You're gonna be the next Steve Jobs, like bringing a product to people that they don't even know they need, that whole thing, right? In the end, if you talk to most successful entrepreneurs, the product they ended up with in the world is very different than the product they launched with, through iteration and listening to the customer and watch. Best example from our world. We used to have our menu boards up where the left board, most powerful board, because we read here in the United States, we read left to right. The left board is the powerful board. And we used to have the traditional Italian drinks. We used to have the cappuccino, the macchiato, the espresso, the traditional drinks there. And then one board over was what we lovingly refer to as the sweet bomb lattes in our world, right? So the latte with chocolate and caramel and vanilla whipped cream on top, garnish, And
how'd you know what I stopped to get this morning?
We very quickly realized no one was buying a macchiato or a campana. Nobody cared. I mean, we were selling one a day, and everybody was buying the
flavored lattes.
Yeah, and so we took the board that was 2 in and moved it to the left-hand board, and then we made our business about selling sweet bomb lattes, and we focused on selling sweet bomb lattes for 15 years, and that's just paying attention and listening to, and so our concept ended up being quite different than what we expected it to be when we launched.
So a couple things. So in the book, I think you touched on in the book Grind, again, I'm going back to it a lot because without even reading the entire book, there's just a lot of principles and ideas that I just dipped in a toe a little bit. I mean, this is good. So business owners and formal education. So I want to talk to you about that because you said students 3 times. So it's like, who are the students? And then, so let's tie this in. You brought up Zuckerberg. We brought up Gary V. So Zuckerberg dipped out of Harvard, I believe, after a year. I believe so. Gary V talks about, he has very strong conversation about formal education and what it's not doing for people now. But then you mixed in and said, our students. So talk about this idea, what you feel about this formal education.
I teach a class at the University of Michigan on entrepreneurship. That when I talk about my students, that's who I'm talking about.
Well, how's this line up with talking about the formal education conversation we're going to have here for business owners?
Well, I talk to my students about the fact that I think if you're a good student, which most of these students are good students, if you're a good student, it's going to get in the way of you being a successful entrepreneur. And I believe that, right? I was not a good student. And I was always interested in everything else going on in the world except for my studies, and I scraped by, I got it done ish, but if you're a good student, you are used to following the rules. You're used to sort of being told what to do, how to perform, what to read, how to do it. And you're good at complying. And I don't know about you, Mark, but most of the entrepreneurs I know, they are anything but good at complying, right? And their skill is breaking outside of the standard modus operandi in the world and executing. And as my company's grown, that mentality has gotten in my way, right? Because an organization, a larger organization with significant leadership within it, it can't deal with me, right? And so I bring these things in like fire bombs from the out, and it's like that's not how it works anymore. And so I'm on a pretty steep learning curve figuring out how to manage a more substantial organization today than an entrepreneurial startup.
Bring me with you. I had a conversation for about an hour last night. I walked into our sales manager's office here in Cincinnati, and our training director, they were sitting in there. Both of them were having a good conversation. We sat down and talked about this idea about, they told me about 2 months ago, they're like, hey, we just need to limit your touches, man.
It's hard.
Like, what are you talking about here, man? I love you guys. I love this thing. I'm passionate about it. And I understand.
I did something, I think it was last year. There's a magazine called QSR. It caters to quick service restaurants. Mm-hmm. And they do this thing, one CEO to another, or some I don't know, some tagline like that. And they closed it with, if you have one word of advice for any CEO in America, what would it be? And I said, shut up. And as your organization grows, at the beginning, I'm not talking about startup, right? Yeah. I'm talking about as your organization grows, we think we're the smartest people in the room, right? And that's the bane of the entrepreneurial spirit, and it does get in the way. We're on a very specific conversation here about entrepreneurship, which is different. That's a different phase of development. Yeah. But I mean, most of us have to shut up more.
Yeah. So how do traditional students then? How do they jive with this idea? Because I think entrepreneurship for the past, I don't know if it's 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, has been the hot thing. And it seems like so many people look at it as the North Star. But they're traditional students that you're talking to, that you're saying if you're a good student, you most likely, that's going to serve you well as an entrepreneur. So how are these things, how do you tie them together? How do they coexist, or they just don't? Like, how can someone that's getting a traditional education come out and become a successful, properly minded, all-in, focused entrepreneur?
Again, I do think there are those that are flat out brilliant, right? That can live within the confines of the traditional structure of academia, mm-hmm. and bring what they need to bring to a business as an entrepreneur. And I do think those people exist. I think they're few and far between.
I don't know many of them, But maybe the people as I'm thinking through this, because I'm thinking even a guy that received his law degree at University of Michigan, Sam Zell, massively successful, probably one of the highest levels of success of commercial real estate probably in the world. And that guy practiced law for like 2 or 3 weeks after he got out of law school, somewhere around there. And then he realized, like, hey, this environment, something about the books I've read, videos I've watched, something about it just didn't speak to him. It wasn't for him. But he was a highly successful student, but he came out and said, hey, this isn't me. And so maybe those traditionally educated people, maybe that's the ones that need to run organizations when people tell us we need to shut up.
Yeah, right. I don't know. I hate my whole point of doing all this work is to never discourage anybody from trying to become an entrepreneur.
100%.
So I think that if you were a good student, I just think it's important to understand how that mentality might get in your way to be able to break the rules.
So what will overcome that mentality? So if guys like me and you both are like, hey, like, go chase your dreams, man, because anything's possible. And if you believe that, if you have big dreams and a big vision for your life and you believe anything's possible, like, that's a big unlock. So what's the idea when they're 22, 23? Like, what do we say? Like, come up with a good idea, stay focused, go all in, believe in yourself, anything's possible. Then can attitude supplant the traditional educated mind?
Yeah, I think for sure. But and I was just sitting here thinking, like, what are some examples of moments when we broke the rules? Mm-hmm. And I remember one time, relatively early on in the business, our accountant advised us that we were growing too quickly, and that we needed to bolster our balance sheet in order to be able to stay solvent and relevant and so on. The worst advice in the world. And here's this, he's an accountant, right? He's supposed to be like, this is the smart guy in the room. This is the guy who, we're supposed to be. And I've said, accountants, from an entrepreneurial perspective, accountants are the bane of my existence. They are the bane of my existence. And I'm sorry, I love my accountant. She's amazing, right? But I think she would understand what I'm talking about, because, when he gave us, this was a previous accountant, when he gave us that advice, had we slowed down, we would have gotten murdered, right? We did. And so, that was a moment, and we were like, there is no way in the world we can slow down. Like, and so we just kept hammering it at that point, and going for it. And accountants, to me, what I look at my accountants to do is keep me in compliance with the IRS.
Yep.
That's it. I don't look at financial statements. I don't review financial statements. There's one financial statement I like to look at. That's my forecast. And then I like to look at how we performed in relation to our forecast, period. I don't give a shit about balance sheets. I know, like, someone's got to be paying attention to that stuff, and they do. But all I want to look at is, how do we perform? How smart are we? How closely do we perform to our forecast? And I track a number, which is a variance in relation to forecast and actual. And I've got a mantra inside of my world that I want to see that number narrow. Within 24 months, I think I've got that under 5% variance. But that's like a 6 month I think it's a 6 month projection we're tracking. And I want to see that number, that variance number, really, really narrow. Because then at that point, it's easy to run the business.
Yeah. So in the book also, so there's these 3 ideas. I don't know if there's greater principles, but one's hustle, one's self-evaluation, and one's commitment. So if we can touch on all 3 of those. So this idea of hustle to you.
Yeah, promote. I mean, to me, hustle means promote. And that's get out there. And, for years, if you called us, and by years, I'm talking a decade. If you called us and you wanted us to support an event or be involved in something, the answer was yes. We didn't care what it was. We didn't care where it was. We didn't care what time it was. And I remember there was in East Lansing, there was a group. A woman came in, and, I was like, kind of like flirting with her, whatever, just having fun. And, she said something to me like, come on, like, you're gay, right? I was like, what? no, I'm not gay. She's like, oh, but you've been at like every gay function in the city for the last, 2 years. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just promoting my business. Right. And you could have said that about Little League football. Like you could have said that about any organization. We were hustling to promote our business, and any opportunity to do something we would. And so to me, hustle is about promotion primarily. And sure, there's times when you have to work hard and so on, but I like that term hustle in relation to promotion and selling and building.
So we can go the self-evaluation. We talked about that a little bit earlier about the personal due diligence and all that, but the commitment piece. I think you hit on it a little bit when you start in the focus, but what about commitment?
If you aren't interested in being the most dedicated and dependable employee inside of your business for the first 3, 5, 7, 10 years, don't start. That is a level of commitment. So the most dedicated. You don't, in a startup, you don't pass off the hard moments, right? When something goes sideways, you are stepping in, you are solving the problem, you are there, right? And you're setting that tone. And that's really what it's about. I mean, yeah, of course, the work's got to get done, and whatever the emergency is has to get solved. But you're also setting the tone of your commitment level to the business. And if you aren't bringing that level of commitment to the business, your people won't. They just won't. And whenever I hear people complain about their employees' commitment level, I always want to ask them about putting a mirror up. Are they setting the right example, right? And I think oftentimes, I don't know this, but oftentimes they're probably not setting the right example. And so, to me, commitment to the business, I don't know about you, but it's just
natural to me.
We weren't going to lose.
No, that's it, man. Like
you were committed.
Yeah, there's these ideas and these principles, and I try to help so many people, and I go back to when a lot of people are like, man, so I sat down with my mom. I don't spend as much time with her as I should. She's the really good influence in my life, and just an awesome lady. But she wasn't an entrepreneur; she was a nurse. And I sat down with her about 4 months ago, went out to the little country house that I was born in. She still lives in the same home, and that I was actually born in. Wasn't born in a hospital. I was born like in the house. I think that stuff happened back then. And so we sat down in this little swing in her backyard, and I sat down across from her. Like I said, even though I don't spend as much time as I should, these are really, really valuable to me for 2 reasons. One, because I just value the beginning she gave me, and the example that she set for me, work ethic, is tremendous. But she looked at me and she said, "How did you become this?" My own mom. And I snickered inside because I don't have reflection. I just get up every day and I grind and I hustle and I stay committed. And I looked at her and I went, "You're my mom. What do you mean how to become this? You've seen it, you know." And she went, "Oh, no. And so that caused a lot of reflection. If this even seemed unique to her, and she couldn't envision somebody to think like this, to talk like this, and who knows, the past success I've had, who knows how to even calculate and what's it worth and what the future is going to be. But as I look back, where did this come from? Because I do want to help other people. Because I know if they go all in and they're committed, it's evident how committed you are to get to 320 stores. Man, that's significant. You don't think every mom and pop coffee shop around the country, the thousands and thousands and thousands of them, you don't think they have the hope and the dream of the second one? The third one, the what if I can actually not work 70 hours a week and step out from behind the counter? And so for what you guys have accomplished, it's significant. But I'm like, man, how did I become this? Because I was that 14-year-old insecure kid. I was the kid that around the punch bowl at a dance, I was nervous and couldn't ask the girl to dance. That was me. I remember those moments of insecurity, and I think you've described it so well in that, man, I was just all in. No matter what I did. Until I was 25, I worked for some guys helping build a significant retail company. Didn't have any ownership, traveled around the country, opening stores, training managers, hiring, recruiting. But I was all in on that company, all in on that brand, and I wasn't making shit. And the things and the principles I learned there have served me so well. And so how do we transfer this idea of commitment, of focus, all in, of whether it's called passion, whether it's called hustle? I don't know, man, but I wish I could, because there's so many people that start and they become an entrepreneur. I just wish that I could just transfer and download this data. And I don't think it has to do with my intelligence, smarter than anybody else. I just see so often when somebody talks, I just think differently. And I just want to give that to them. And that's what I'm searching for now. Here at 43, as this business grows, I'm really searching, because what I want to do is I want to help people. And I want to help them figure out and know if they're going to be this person that's going to push through and be committed. Because if not, you can ruin your life.
Well, I mean, that is the ultimate question, of course. And I don't think I have an answer. I think that I always wanted to do something cool in the world. And so, I was always inspired to do something cool in the world and wake up in the morning and be fired up. Like I get up this morning, I scroll through my calendar, and I got a really cool day today. I'm on this with you. I got a great meeting coming up at 4:00 that I've been looking forward to for weeks. I'm really, and so I just want to do cool things, but I don't know why maybe some people don't believe that they can. And I was that insecure kid too, right? I mean, everybody was,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe a few weren't. I actually think they're sort of sociopathic when they're teenagers and they actually have confidence. Like, I think there's something wrong with that. But I don't know what the answer is to that.
But don't they need to know that you're like them?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in a small rural community in Michigan, right? I'm not a bright guy. I didn't set no one would have suspected that I would go on and build a company like this. And so, yeah, I just,
do you think it's more of do you think it's more of this idea maybe that, I don't know at what moment Mike probably started believing that he could do anything, but maybe it was more important that nobody told you couldn't.
That's a very good point. Okay. That's a very good point, because I tell people, my parents put me through, they gave me quite a nice undergraduate education. It was a small liberal arts private school. It was very expensive, and my parents were clear, though, at the end of that, it was over and I was on my own, right? There was nothing there for me, but here I was, and 25 years old, working as an assistant manager in a coffee shop after I left the university. My mom was a professor at that university, and I was working for one of her colleagues, and they set me up on a tee. I mean, they set me up perfectly. I was getting published in papers. I was going to be able to handpick my graduate school, like, no joke. And that's the opportunity I gave up, to become an assistant manager in a coffee shop. And like, I look at that now, they never questioned me. They not one time did they say, are you sure this is what you want to be doing? They just loved me and supported me. And so, that, I think that's a really, really important part of this, is that nobody told me I could, but nobody told me I couldn't either, and so I think that, I guess the other piece, Mark, that, I don't like talking about, because it makes it sound like if you don't have it, it can't work. But I was always like, carve your eyeballs out competitive. And I was like, I was going to win. I was going to win. I didn't care what we were doing. I didn't care if we were playing, tic-tac-toe on the driveway. I was going to win, and that was a powerful personality trait for me. And I do think there's some need for that in entrepreneurship.
Do you think that, so the idea of that, this isn't the podcast about me, this is Mike and BIGGBY and Grind's podcast, but if anyone asked me, or if you went around and knew the people that significantly knew me, they say, hey, give me Mark's top 1 or 2 or 3 traits, I think the first one that would come out would be my competitive spirit.
Right.
I think it just would. But I think that what I found is that combines with this relentless approach to anything I choose to do.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's this topic that's going around, and it seems like our country is very divided. And this isn't, don't worry, This isn't a one of those crazy subjects that we shouldn't touch on, but there's this idea about should you do more than you're paid for? And it's very divided on people who are not doing a minute extra of work beyond what they're paid for, or people that have this idea that, no, it's necessary. It's necessary that you do more. So the question is, do you believe that that's important? If not, what's your thoughts around it?
Well, I just wrote an article for Forbes on this. It'll come out in the next probably 3 weeks, 4 weeks, called quiet quitting, right? That's the concept you're talking about.
That's the new concept. I've always thought you should do more than you're paid for.
Yeah. So I would say this, as an employer, so the article basically says, as an employer, if quiet quitting pisses you off, you're an asshole. Mm-hmm. Now, that's from the employer's perspective, right? That you pay somebody to do a job. They should show up and they should do their job, and that whenever they're supposed to go home, they should go home. And they shouldn't go home filled with anxiety and stress, and they should go. And so that's how we as employers, I believe, need to treat people. Now, we're not talking, you flip that around and you say, what does it take
there you go
to get things done in the world? Well, maybe that mentality as the employee could get in your way if you aspire to become a successful entrepreneur, or if and so I know I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth.
I don't think you are, though. So here's why you're not. I think you're exactly right. All employers should be very happy compensating people for the job that you've asked them to do and that they've accepted, and completely okay when that day comes to an end and they get paid commensurate with the effort that they gave, with the stamp on the time clock, because that's the life they chose.
Yeah.
But I still look at my everyday on that guy working those retail stores. That guy, whether it was cutting lawns when I was young and working on little maintenance crews. And for some reason, I think my mom instilled this sense of work ethic in me. And I look back on my life now as an entrepreneur, and I never want to use the word successful because I want to be successful more tomorrow than I was today. And so I just don't ever want to get lost in that on a.
I don't use that word either, Mark.
I don't like it. It just doesn't work with me. And so because success can mean so many different things. But I know that for my personal development, all those years when I was an employee, what helped me move the needle beyond the other people that I was competing with in the job, I did more. I finished my job. Regardless if it was a salary, regardless if it was hourly, and if we couldn't get overtime, I made sure those retail stores looked better than any other retail in that store, in that mall, or that airport. I made sure those shelves were dusted. I made sure the product was straight, was folded properly, that the floor looked great, that when the store opened in the morning, that no one was going to have to do anything in the morning, that they were ready to hit the sales floor that day and just crush it for the customers. And that mentality was recognized by owners and managers above me.
Yeah.
It just was.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a, I mean, it's you hate to say, but
but I wanted more.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I don't think you've got to do that to necessarily have more responsibility within an organization and to excel in your professional career within a corporation. But there's also the idea of constantly getting better, excelling, and improving. I don't know.
It's tough. It's a tough conversation. And I think we should have them with people. I personally think that to help them evaluate what they want out of their life. And just to say, hey, because I didn't start out as the smartest guy in the room, and I never do. I don't. I may think I am at times, being this entrepreneur, but when I play a game, I hardly ever am the best one at first. Hardly ever. But 3 or 4 or 5 games in, I'm going to start to get it.
Yeah.
And with that, I know that if I play 4 or 5 games in a tighter time frame, I'm going to get there quicker. I just knew that about myself. And so if someone is out here looking in the world, and I want you to disagree and push back, out here in the world, and they're like, man, how do I get ahead? I don't have any examples. I was raised in a blue collar family. I'm stuck in this grind of, I'm living paycheck to paycheck, and I have this rent or I have the mortgage, and I'm locked in. I have the 1 or 2 kids, and they literally don't see a way to save any extra money any month to start having some different options and making different decisions in life. That's a tough place to be. And there's so many friends and family members I have that are in that same spot. And the only advice I have to them, these are people that aren't working with me in my company. The only advice I have is like, you guys, you got to do more. If you want more and you have that feeling like you have to do more, and I'm not tying that to a compensation, you need to grow your mind. You need to grow your understanding. You have to move ahead of other people because we're in a competitive world, whether you like capitalism or not. In this society, we're in a very competitive world. So,
yeah, that sort of reminded me of two stories. One, I've always said the best job you could ever have to prepare yourself to be an entrepreneur is to have a straight commission sales job. And you wake up in the morning and you sell something and you make money, or you wake up in the morning, you don't sell anything and you don't make money. And that's entrepreneurship. You wake up, you move product, you make money, or if you don't move product, you don't. So, and I had a straight commission sales job right out of college, prior to BIGGBY. And, I had 400 retailers in my territory in Southeast Texas. And I had very little management from the company, right? And so I got up and I built this program out where I wanted to visit 20 retailers a day, and I wouldn't go home until I'd visited 20 retailers a day. And I did that. And so I was in my retail stores once a month, and I would go into those stores, and I wasn't there to sell anything. I was just there to be helpful, right? So I would go over and I would look at the products. I would dust the products. I would talk to them about, things that were moving or not moving. And then I would just try to be helpful. So if they had a return, I would handle the return for them, or, whatever it was. And so what that did was that built the relationship. Well, long story short, I ended up going to my first sales meeting, maybe 10 months into the business, 12 months into the business, and being there. And, lo and behold, out of 112 territories in the country, mine was the fastest growing territory in the country. And the VP of sales, who I'd never talked to one time, even though he was my direct boss, never talked to him. And I think he looked at my territory. He's like, I don't need to talk to this guy. Right? He had other problems, but they recognized me and they asked me what I'm doing. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm trying to build a relationship with these retailers. I'm just trying to be helpful to them. And with that, I got sales, of course.
But you weren't.
Right?
But I bet you weren't tracking how many hours you were putting in.
I didn't care.
There you go.
I didn't care. I looked at myself as self-employed. I was a straight commission sales rep. I was not an employee, and I was just trying to make it go. And I took this territory, and I was growing it. I was growing it massively in a relatively quick period of time. I mean, that my competition was in their stores once a year, and all of a sudden, 3 months into me starting this job, they've seen me 3 times. They were like, they paid attention to my products and what I was offering them. They began to trust me, and man, I just crushed it.
So how do you do? Did you take what you learned there and have you transferred that to BIGGBY?
Yeah, of course. I'm so focused on generating more revenue tomorrow. Even right now, sitting here today, like that is what I'm doing in the world, is I'm trying to grow this business. Now I have to do things that are very different today than standing behind a counter taking care of customers. That was a different mentality. Today it's very, very different, right? Like something like this is really important to me growing my business, right? So prospective franchisees can dig into me and see that I was on this podcast, and they can listen to it, and they can begin to understand who we are and what we do, and maybe be more interested in working with us.
Yeah, so I hope a lot of people outside of Cincinnati are listening to this when we put it out next Monday, because there's already 25 stores in Cincinnati. There's no room for anybody else, Mike. What the heck, man? Huh? We're talking too late. Somebody already got to it, man.
Let me give you a little math.
Let's hear it.
So if you look at the great food service retail brands that are sort of in my space from a revenue generation perspective and so on, Tim Hortons in Canada would be an example. Dunkin' Donuts on the East Coast would be an example. Subway sandwiches would be an example. There's more. If you want to be a dominant brand, all of these brands had one store, better penetration than one store per 10,000 people. So many people does Cincinnati have? It's like 2.5 million.
Yeah, like 2.1 or 2.2. I mean, you can keep on going outside of it, but north of 2 million.
North of 2 million. So it's 200 stores.
Okay, so you have a room for another 175. Correct. Noted. Word on the street to the folks in Cincinnati if you want to come and operate an awesome coffee shop. So do we say that the right way? Do we sell BIGGBY short if I call it a coffee shop?
No, it's a coffee shop. Absolutely. I love that it's a coffee shop.
What makes BIGGBY special? That's not even a separate question, but what does it? Because I know you're going to say something.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it's what I do. It's my day job, right?
Yeah, right.
So how we differentiate is really primarily from a branding perspective. As a retailer, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to fit our brand in between this sort of pretentious Starbucks brand and maybe you call it McDonald's or maybe even Dunkin' Donuts. And so we believe there's this middle space where our product is really, really comparable to a Starbucks, their menu, and I think our offering fits Middle America's palate better than Starbucks does, and so we're trying to live within these massive behemoths and feed off of both sides, right? And that differentiates us. So our branding is very accepting. It's not intimidating. It's not pretentious. Like Starbucks is a very pretentious brand, right? And I love Starbucks. I mean, people ask me. I mean, look at what they've done. I mean, this is one of the most successful retail rollouts in the history of the world. If you're not impressed by that, shame on you. Right. And so what they were able to do, what Howard Schultz did is mind blowing. And so, I now do I like a Starbucks latte better than ours? No, I don't. I like what we've developed better than Starbucks. But a lot of people obviously really like Starbucks lattes. And you can't deny that.
Or they just haven't had a BIGGBY one yet.
Yeah, there you go. So that differentiates us. I think the other thing that we have worked very, very hard to make our organization and understanding that our customer in our organization is not the person walking into the retail store. It is the franchise owner. And so our customer is servicing the person who wants to make an investment in the retail coffee business. And then our job is to make them successful. And I'll tell you that here's the Fred DeLuca from Subway. We were very fortunate to have a fairly close relationship with him. He was interested in buying us, and so he stayed very involved. And I was always paying attention about the coffee guys in Lansing. He always talked about us as the coffee guys in Lansing. And so I remember sitting across from him, and he asked me. He said, "Mike, as a manager of a franchise business, like what's your job?" Yeah, I don't know. So I go into my laundry list of responsibilities and things that I have to do on a day-to-day basis. And he's like, yeah. But he just, I'm like, what is your job? What are you here to do? Like, what are you? And so, I mean, I screwed up the answer. Like he asked me 3 times. Finally, we got to this place where he gave me the answer, and it was, your job is to protect and grow the franchisee's capital, period. Like a ton of bricks landed on me, and he's right. Like my focus, everything I have to do is make sure that when that franchise owner comes into my world and they make an investment, and for a lot of people, this is a massive investment, a big part of their net worth is going into this coffee shop, that my job is to protect that capital, the invested capital, and then grow it. And so when I was able to transition my thinking into, and I think that differentiates us, differentiates us in the franchising space. Like we're pretty obsessed with that concept.
I'm sure that. So who's the ideal? I have no clue on what it takes to be a BIGGBY franchisee. Let me throw out a number and just smack me down if you think I'm wrong, or if I am wrong. It's not think. So there's probably you have to have a net worth of $250,000 to $500,000. Maybe liquid assets of 100 to 250. Are those numbers in line?
I mean, I'd go a little north.
Okay, up towards $1 million in net worth.
Yeah, you're $250,000 net worth. I mean, that's a pretty big roll of dice. The woman that handles my development would punch me in the face right now if she were sitting here. But I would like to see probably something in the range of a $500,000 to $700,000 net worth. And yeah, your liquidity number's about right.
Yeah. Okay. So who's the ideal candidate? Do you have that designed? And if you don't want to talk about it, you can say, hey, Mark, they're ready. Who's the ideal candidate in your mind? You're going out here promoting the business. You want to go from 320 to 750 in 3 to 5 years or something. You have to have it narrowed in on who's the ideal person.
Yeah. Empty nester. And that the empty nester is the reason I say that is that, but we have had amazing success with stay-at-home parents who are now empty nesters. And this is not proven out. This is my own little theory, right? That they have been running a business for 20 or 25 years, which is their household. And they are really in tune with our employee base. They're really in tune with the teenager that's going to walk into your store and be your employee. They have something to prove. And that the stay-at-home parent has in many ways has something to prove to the world. And they're mature people, right? They've been through the ringer, generally speaking. And that's an amazing candidate for us. The candidate that I don't appreciate is the candidate that comes into our world having been successful in a different business, thinking they already know it. And that to me is I tell people to take 2 years, run the business exactly how we ask you to for 2 years. Look at it like going back to get an MBA and running a coffee shop. As simple as that sounds. I believe that's what it takes to fully understand the mechanism that we built and the business that we're in is 2 years of operating it.
Then tell you how to make the latte better.
Because
then they may know
better. Well, and the one of the amazing things about franchising is that you've had to have some order of success in your life in order to be able to buy a franchise and build a business. Mm-hmm. And so our people come in with pretty significant skill sets already developed. And so now we have hundreds of franchisees and think of the power of that, right? That when we need something in the world, we've got this network that we can go out to and get expertise on, just about anything, right? Just about anything. We got a franchise owner in our system that is going to set the world record in pull-ups. Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy.
It's crazy.
So here's what I've already answered the question, but you just kind of answered it, but I was going to ask, I had this written down like, hey, this guy who's operating a business who you're franchising the brand, make a argument, distinction, give a perspective on franchising versus not. Good and bad, reflecting back through all these years.
There's nothing bad. Now, talk to a lot of other franchisors, and they're going to tell you that the bad stuff is that you get these people involved in your system that don't agree with who you are and don't agree with how you want to do it and have different standards, and they don't operate the business how you would operate the business, and on and on and on and on. I love that about the business. So our job is to lead, coach, mentor people down a path to success. And we believe that we have a system to do that. And so that's the challenge. The only downside to franchising is you have these really independent, strong people, personalities that have been successful in something. They come in and thank goodness they are who they are, yeah. Right? Thank goodness they have this independent streak, that they're willing to roll the dice, that they're willing to take the risk. And so if that personality, if you want good employees and you want your franchise owners to be good employees, you're going to have a really, really poor franchise concept, because that's not what it takes to be a successful franchisee. And so now, yeah, at times it's a little taxing, right? But that's the business, and they're our customers. They are our customers. And once you cross that hurdle to where that person is your customer, all of a sudden the franchise business becomes a very different proposition.
You're just there to serve. And if your mentality is like, hey, I'm here to serve, there's no problem. That's an issue.
Yeah. There's no problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the upside of franchising is immense, right? And I think that probably the community of people you've brought together that are part of your world, that is the power of franchising that nobody talks about.
Yeah, that's when you touched on that before I asked the question. I'm like, he's already answered it. When you talked about this wide breadth of the resource, you have these intelligent people who are out running these businesses that have all this life experience. I mean, what better format for even you to learn and BIGGBY and the company to learn from than people like that?
And for them to learn from each other.
100%.
Like that's the piece. Like if you're new in a franchise system, and I've coached people that I have friends of mine that are in different franchise systems where they bought franchises. I'm like, you got to find like the top 5, 10 performing franchisees in the system. And then you got to make these people your best friend. Like you got to make them your best friends. And then you got to lean on them, and they have a vested interest in your success. When you invest in a franchise company, you're investing in the fact that that franchise company is going to become successful, that brand is going to become successful because you're going to be able to leverage that success. And so we all, as a franchise owner inside of a franchise system, you have a vested interest in that retail unit over there succeeding. And so you're going to help that person.
So what's leaning on them? That top 5 to 10%, having you lean on them, what's that look like? Say, hey, lean on those people. What's that look like from your seat and the other co-founder's seat for those top 5 to 10% of all-in franchisees?
Well, when a new person comes in, I want them to, sit and pay attention and listen to that franchise owner talk about their business. How do they frame up their business? Follow the system. So I can tell a prospective franchisee or a new franchisee, tell them blue in the face that the system works. But you got this person over here that's built 17 stores, who's making really good money, who has clearly a successful business from a financial metrics perspective on their hands. And that person looks at you and says, just follow the system. Boom. Right. And our top 10% of our franchise owners, no doubt they would say the system works. Like, just follow the system. They will. And so that would be another piece of it. Long-term perspective. They've all been through the ringer, just like Mark, you have, and I have, right? Like they've all been through the ringer. There's countless stories of, I have a woman that's now retired, which is an amazing thing. She built a real solid business in our world. She sold it. She's now retired. But, she tells stories of going out into her car in the middle of the afternoon and crying and crying and crying because she didn't think she was going to be able to do it. She didn't think it was going to work. And so that perspective, is a perspective I want the new franchise owner to have. Solving smaller problems, like just little things in the business. Like, how do you handle this? How do you handle that? Do you do security cameras in your stores? Now, I can talk all day long about how I think security cameras are a waste of time, right? And it's a crutch. And that you certainly should never sit at home looking at your iPad, looking at your security camera, because if you're doing that, you don't trust your people and you haven't built a relationship with your people. And so if you feel like you need to spy on your people in your stores, you're a mess as a manager. You're a mess. And so, going off in some details.
I like it. Let's talk about a mess, man. Yeah, but I think that's just you could take that idea for anybody operating any business.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You're just building, and I'll just use it. I think there's a curse word that applies here and there. I read some of your statements. So you're just a shit manager.
Yeah. You're a mess. Yeah. And so to me, those are the lessons, and I have successful franchisees in my system that believe in having cameras in their stores. Sure. Everybody's got a different opinion on that, but, I would never do that. I would never spy on my people. I would never, maybe for security reasons, there's an argument to have cameras.
But you're not looking at it at night. That's for a reference if something happens.
I would never look at it. I would never advocate looking at it.
So over your left shoulder, can I take it in a different direction?
Yeah.
Life Lab. What is this? It must be very important to you.
Yeah. So this is book 2. And book 2 comes out May 23rd of next year. And book 2 is called Grow. And so grind goes concept, the minute you commit to a concept, to your first day of positive cash flow. Grow is from your first day of positive cash flow, or that bootstrapping entrepreneurial phase where you're very actively involved in the business, through to what I define as sustainability. And sustainability is by definition, by my definition, is you are now irrelevant to your business. And so this is that arc. And so Life Lab is a group inside of our organization that is firmly committed to our purpose. We haven't talked anything about our purpose, our vision, what we're up to. But that group is committed to our purpose, which our purpose is to support you in building a life that you love. And so as a franchise company, that's very clear how we do that with a franchise owner, but it's also with baristas and customers and even you today, Mark. Like my purpose here today is to support you in building a life you love. I don't know how I can do that, but I'm trying my best.
You're doing a good job, man. Hey, that background does enough of it. Are you kidding me? I'm mesmerized.
Yeah. And so Life Lab is something that we put together. We offer a couple of small, not small, they're very big things, but two things that we do, very detailed things that we do. One, we offer coaching, 1 hour of coaching a month to every employee within our company, the franchise company. And Life Lab manages that world. And that coaching is not about becoming a better employee. That is coaching to help you pursue your passions. The coach does not have any communication with your manager. And so there's no crossover there. So if you're having issues with your manager, then this is a place you can go to talk about that or whatever it might be. And then the other thing that they manage is Life Lab manages is a curriculum that we offer. It's four different courses that are meant to support you in building a life that you love. And they are, the four foundational elements are vitality. We believe you have to be vital, spiritually, physically, mentally, emotionally vital in order to pursue a life you love. A sense of belonging. So that's course number 2. And that is the sense of belonging piece is you got to have your people, right? And we all have our people. Mine happen to be my beer league hockey team that I've been playing on for 27 years. I mean, these are my people, right? The third one is oh my gosh, I just blanked out.
I'll bail you out. Say, hey, when you get on the third and fourth, just interrupt me. But here's what I was thinking about Life Lab. What's that look like to support that sort of an entity within your company? What, employees, how many of your people are in roles? Like, what type of resources does it take to operate and run that?
I don't think about it that often. Now I think we have 5 full-time people in that world. So it's hundreds of thousands, and
you're probably talking 300 or 400K.
Yeah, it's a big number, but again, it's one of the most valuable things we do.
Yeah, it's speaking to me, man. Yeah, if you can have, I just employees, whatever. I just look at this as whether it's partners, whether it's people that are helping us build the company, whatever the term is that there are people that are around you every day, that are around me every day, and I'm responsible for helping them live a better life.
Yeah.
Like it had to come from those ideas. Like you guys have been at this 11 years longer than I have, and I have those thoughts. I have that purpose because I'm like, man, you guys believed in me enough. You believed in this thing enough that you're taking this time that you're giving to a career, to a work. You could choose to do it anywhere. You're giving it to this thing that I originally had this idea and this passion. I have to make sure that I'm giving you the best possible life I can and better than you being anywhere else.
Yeah.
Right.
I talk all the time about how the biggest compliment in the world is when somebody accepts a job with you.
Yeah.
That they've chosen to come to you. And I've had some amazing hires over the years where it's like truly an honor.
But then your responsibility starts.
Yeah. And then how we talk about that, the language we use is it's my job. So tell me the perfect ending to your story. And it's my job to fulfill that. That's what I want to do as a leader is you tell me what the perfect end to this whole thing is for you. And then it's my job to support you in fulfilling that. That is supporting you in building a life that you love. Whether that is you want to go open a cupcake store. If that's your end to this story, to this chapter, which is BIGGBY Coffee, cool. I'm going to help you. We're going to figure out, right? Maybe you want to join the FBI. Maybe you want to go to graduate school at Caltech and study, prosthetic limbs. These are all things that have happened in my world, right? Where people leave to do these amazing things. And you know, that, Mark, that's a piece that the traditional mindset of management is that these people work for you, and talking about celebrating them leaving you to go pursue their passion, that's heresy, right? That's heresy. Like, wait a minute, you mean you're investing hundreds of thousands of dollars in this Life Lab thing, that all that it's about is helping them pursue their passions, and that means they might choose to leave the organization? Are you crazy? Like, you're crazy. But what I tell them is yeah, but imagine the people who go through all of this, and they spend a bunch of time figuring out what their passion is, and then BIGGBY Coffee aligns with that passion. These people are superhuman. These people are the employees you always dreamed you had. And so this is, and they might not be around forever. And isn't that amazing? They're going to go there. So this is the area of the business that I am like super passionate about. This is my life's work, is supporting people and building lives that they love. And I love my business model because of that. Because this is a franchise company, that's what you're doing. You're bringing somebody in, and how you're supporting them and building a life that they love is that you are helping them build a business. And then that business is going to compel them to, or provide them the ability to build a life that they love. Presumably that's the idea. And so, yeah, this is my, I'm glad you brought that up, because the Life Lab thing is a really powerful part of my world.
Yeah. I said, hey man, it has to be important to you because that's what's on display.
Yeah.
And so what's awesome.
Well, and by the way, just real quick, exceeding your basic needs is course 3.
Okay.
And then knowing who you want to be, which is a course on visioning, which every 16, 17, 18-year-old in the world should take a course on visioning. And the fact that we don't have courses on visioning, the fact that we don't have courses on vitality, the fact that we don't have courses on sense of belonging, the fact that we don't have courses on exceeding your basic needs, which is a financial management course, the fact that those 4 courses aren't in the curriculums at high schools and colleges around the world is a shame. It's I mean, this is the stuff you need to learn in order to be able to put together in my opinion, a very solid life where you can pursue the life you love. So we teach kids about algebra and geometry, whatever. Like, who's ever used geometry in their life? Let's put a kid through a class on how to deal with their personal finances, or on visioning, or like, that's the stuff that's important. That's the stuff that works.
Do you think that you can grow BIGGBY at an exponential compounding number while this thing is so big and passionate to you at the same time?
This is what's going to make BIGGBY grow at a compounding rate. This is the work that's going to make BIGGBY grow at a compounding rate.
That's exciting, man. It's not often that I sit here on these conversations as, you know, I look at podcasting as a very selfish thing for me.
You get to learn. It's so cool, man. You get to talk to people about, it's awesome. I love it.
And so often, though, you sit here and it's good conversation, but there's principles that you've developed and evolved and you've learned that you are now implementing in your business that are substantial, man. You could take any business and apply the things that you're talking about and develop something very special.
I agree with that 100%.
Very special. So I've learned some stuff, man. I'm gonna take this and share some things internally, you know, with our people as we grow and the other business owners around. This is special. And when I share this next week, after we cut this up and we put it out on all platforms, this is one that I'm going to go back, whether it's 11 o'clock at night or 12 at night, or I'm in the car at 1 in the morning going back home. I think these are going to bring me some good moments of inspiration. So I personally thank you for being the person that you are and the things you've developed, man, because these are the things that help me.
If we can help you at any time, reach out.
Awesome, man. Who knows? Maybe I drive my butt 5.5, 6 hours to East Lansing and say, hey, Mike, you're a busy guy, but show me an hour or two, man. Show me this thing.
Yeah, I'd love to. Truly. I mean, this is what we do. And so, you know, if I can be helpful in any way, my team can be helpful in any way. I mean, this is what we want to be doing in the
Awesome, world. Man. Hey, thank you for taking the time. I know you're busy. And whatever your 4 o'clock is that you've been excited for weeks, I hope it's as good as you think it's going to be.
Thank you.
If you ever come back to town, man, if you're ever in Cincy, Northern Kentucky.
I'm coming back. There's a guy in town that belongs to a private bourbon club. And I was like, oh, this is a cool idea. And so then I was down there last week and he invited me to go to his private bourbon club, but I already had plans. And so I'm coming back because I want to go to this private bourbon club. I can't remember the name of it right now, but I'm all in.
So when you come back, Matt, I'd love to meet up. So if I showed you over my right shoulder over here, we bought a couple of barrels. And
get out of here.
Yeah. Cool. So we have a local brewery. It's called New Riff. And the bourbon thing is it has to be developed and distilled in Kentucky and this whole thing. If not, it's whiskey, right? We have that passionate thing. And so we bought one, ended up being 200 bottles of New Riff, branded it and everything. And I have them on my right shoulder. I have blends. I got all sorts of it because we're in Kentucky. I have to have it in my studio. So you're not seeing it too much, but man, I'd love to come back. We're building a content studio, not just my podcast studio here. A content studio that's behind me that we're going to develop content. When people come sit here in the studio, we walk across the hall and talk about 3 or 4 principles that I learned from the podcast. And I'd love for you to come in town, man. If you have an hour to stop by here and we're sitting in 2 chairs and we look at each other, there's a 14-foot digital screen behind us. And we can put the BIGGBY logo, put my real estate company logo and sit and talk about some of these principles deeper.
Well, let's do I'm going to be in Cincinnati absolutely when my new book comes out. So let's get with Kristen. I'll make sure to send her a note right now to get that scheduled when I come back to Cincinnati again. I'd love to do it, and I'd love to have a glass of bourbon in my hand when we're doing it.
100%, man. I have it right here.
Love it.
All right,
it's booked.
Thank you for the time. I'll have Dave.
It'd be my honor to come do that.
It'll be awesome, man. Thank you. And who knows? Maybe I steal 30 minutes and you come in on one of our sales meetings and you teach us the stuff you've learned. I'm really selfish in that way. I utilize these resources.
I'd love to.
Awesome.
Honestly.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. And anything we can do, I don't know what I can do. I don't know if I find you a franchise owner. I don't know. But anything I can do, I'm happy to help because I think somebody working with you guys, there is no doubt I leave here today that anybody who opens up a BIGGBY and then anybody who works at those stores, they're gonna become a better person, man, and their life's gonna be a little bit better being around you guys. So
cool.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for that. Appreciate your time.
All right, man. Have an awesome day and enjoy your 4 o'clock big meeting.
I will. I'm gonna. Talk to you later.
See you, man. Thanks.
Yeah, bye.
Hey, guys, if you really liked that video and you gained some valuable insight from Mike McFall about BIGGBY Coffee and the principles and the leadership that they talked about and even the Life Lab, hey, make sure you subscribe and you like us, and feel free to jump in, and you'd help us out if you jump in on the place that you love to see your podcast, whether it's on YouTube, it's on Spotify, or on iTunes. We'd love for you to go in there, listen to the other episodes, like those, subscribe, and continue to help us growing the brand so we can bring more people like Mike and business owners to all of our brains. So help us out. Thank you.